My ex moved away for 2 months for work. She then told me she was pregnant when she returned, but once I added up the dates, I knew she was cheating, and I demanded a paternity test. She refused to take a test, so I divorced her. I've been holding this in for months now, and I need to finally let it out. My ex-wife and I were married for 4 years before everything fell apart. We had what I thought was a perfect relationship. We rarely fought, shared the same values, and had plans to start a family soon. Last year, she got an amazing opportunity to work on a project in Seattle. We lived in Chicago. It was a 2-month assignment that could really boost her career, so naturally, I supported her decision to go. We video called every night, texted throughout the day, and everything seemed normal. She'd tell me about her day, the people she was working with, and how much she missed home. When she returned in March, things felt different. She was more distant, checking her phone constantly, and seemed preoccupied. About 3 weeks after her return, she surprised me with what should have been wonderful news. She was pregnant. Initially, I was overjoyed. We'd been talking about having children, and it felt like perfect timing. But then something started nagging at me. That night, I couldn't sleep, and I found myself doing the math. According to her doctor's appointment, she was roughly 8 weeks along. The dates didn't add up. I was in Chicago. She was in Seattle. Unless we'd somehow defied the laws of physics, this baby couldn't be mine. When I confronted her about it, she became defensive. She insisted the doctor must have gotten the dates wrong, that sometimes early pregnancy dating can be inaccurate. But I could see it in her eyes. She knew she'd been caught. I asked her to take a paternity test, just to put my mind at ease. Her reaction told me everything I needed to know. She refused, saying I was insulting her by even suggesting it, that I didn't trust her. The next few weeks were a nightmare. She started telling our families that I was being cruel and unsupportive during her pregnancy. Her parents called me, begging me to step up and be a man. My own mother initially questioned why I couldn't just accept the baby as mine, regardless of paternity. But I knew I couldn't live with that uncertainty, with that betrayal. I filed for divorce. The hardest part wasn't the paperwork or moving out. It was watching people choose sides without knowing the full story. She still refused the paternity test, even when my lawyer requested it. Eventually, the divorce was finalized, and I learned through mutual friends that she'd moved back to Seattle. Recently, I saw on social media that she had the baby. The child looks nothing like me, but bears a striking resemblance to one of her colleagues from Seattle who, coincidentally, is now her new partner. I feel vindicated but also deeply sad. Not for losing her. I'm past that, but for the life I thought we had. I don't regret my decision to walk away. Some people have called me cold for not manning up and raising the child anyway, but I believe everyone deserves to build their life on truth, not lies. I'm sharing this because I want others who might face similar situations to know that it's okay to stand up for yourself, to demand honesty, and to walk away when trust is irreparably broken. I'm still healing, still processing, but I'm also looking forward. Sometimes the hardest decisions are the right ones, and sometimes losing someone who doesn't respect you is actually finding yourself. Edit. Thank you all for the supportive comments. It means a lot to know I'm not alone in feeling this way. On to the last story. I had suspicions of my wife cheating on me. Then I found her secret journals which revealed everything, including an update. I'm in shock, and I really need some advice right now. Me, 40M, and my wife, 37F, have been married for 10 years, and we recently celebrated our anniversary. We have 2 wonderful kids together. Since the beginning of the year, things have been off between us. She's been acting strangely since the beginning of the year, irritable, avoiding me, and we haven't been intimate much. Some days she's happy, some others fully irritated. Sometimes she's a great mother to our kids. Some other times she wishes they had never been born. Recently, I had to go to the urologist for a urinary tract infection, and the test suggested it might be an STD. This was a huge shock because I've never been with anyone other than my wife since we started dating. Right now, she's away at a so-called business seminar, of which I talked about in a different post. She has been keeping diaries for over a decade, and out of desperation, I read them for the first time ever. It turns out she's been having multiple sexual partners for the past 2 years. In particular, there was one affair that lasted over a year, and it seems part of her irritability was due to her lover moving on to someone else. I also discovered she has a hidden Tinder account too, and been meeting with other men regularly. I am devastated beyond words. I feel lost and unsure of what to do, especially since we have 2 little kids who mean the world to me. I need some advice on how to handle the situation. Should I confront her immediately? Should I consult a lawyer first? How do I even begin to process this betrayal and protect my kids through all of this? Update. After my last post, my in-laws kindly offered to look after the kids while my wife was away at her seminar. They remain unaware of the turmoil I've been experiencing. I used this time to go through her diaries and take pictures of their contents. Each entry felt like a stab in the back, leaving me in a state of shock and disbelief. I just don't recognize anymore the person I thought I knew and loved for over a decade. To avoid going into too much detail, the revelations in the diaries would make any movie or TV series I've ever seen pale in comparison. She has been involved with at least 6 different men over the past 2 years. These affairs occurred not only during her so-called seminars, but also during short business trips, dinners, and other supposed work-related events. Meanwhile, I was at home, taking care of the kids and naively believing I was supporting her career. Some entries vividly describe how great these encounters were for her, all while expressing gratitude towards me for being a devoted husband and father, without a single trace of remorse. This lack of guilt and the extent of her deception make me question her emotional and mental state. While reading through the diaries, I felt an overwhelming sense of despair and was seriously contemplating suicide. In the end, I sought refuge with friends for a few days, as I felt I couldn't be alone. Otherwise, I'd do something that could never be taken back. They really supported me a lot during this time and helped me get in contact with a therapist. I'm now taking regular therapy sessions once per week. They also helped me in getting in touch with lawyers specializing in divorce. I'm also getting treatment for my STD as well. Returning home after picking up the kids from my in-laws was an emotionally devastating experience. I couldn't bring myself to smile at all. At some point, while contemplating all the possible ways I could end my life, my daughter just looked at me and saw my face. Without saying a word, she just came over and wrapped her arms around me. At that moment, I broke down, held her tightly and burst into tears in front of her. She's my sweet angel. And the shame of having considered leaving my kids to suffer under their mother's disdain was almost too much to bear. For the first few weeks after finding out, I could barely sleep at all and had to depend on sleeping pills just to get through the nights. My motivation was at an all-time low, affecting both my home life and my work. I forced myself to continue exercising and found out it was the only thing that actually made me feel better during this time. To whoever said in the previous post that I shouldn't give up on doing exercise, thank you. You may have just saved my life. The stress intensified after my wife returned from her trip. Initially, it took all my energy to hide my disgust at her and the knowledge I had gained about her actions. I've somewhat got used to this now, but it remains emotionally draining. She did notice that something was off, but still appears to believe that I am entirely unaware of what has transpired. Her lack of shame is staggering. Just recently, she asked me to buy her the expensive gift I promised her for our 10-year anniversary, for which I made an excuse to not buy it, despite her going into another business trip just the day after our anniversary, which was described in extremely painful detail in her diaries. To make matters worse, she was even arranging to meet her latest partner on the day of my birthday. Nowadays, I've started to feel a lot better, thanks to exercise and therapy. I had never been to a therapist before in my life, and to be honest, I am regretting not having done it sooner. Despite my wife betraying me in the worst possible way, part of me still thought that maybe all of this was my fault. Maybe if I had done this, if I had put more effort into that. I blamed myself for a lot of things. My therapist helped me see through it that, while I could have done some things differently in the end, I cannot be held responsible for the actions she chose to take, and no one deserves to be betrayed in the way I was. If I'm at fault for anything, it's for blaming myself for everything, always putting her needs ahead of my own, and trusting her unconditionally without question. While it was extremely hard for me to balance work and looking after the kids alone every time she went on any of these trips, I always let her go after convincing myself that I was doing it for her, to support her business, to let her relieve stress from being at home, that this is what a supportive husband would do, and that if maybe I had a better job or made her happier, she wouldn't feel the need to escape from home. I'd be lying if I said I'm not depressed anymore, but I'm certainly doing much better these days. Nowadays, I feel more rage rather than sadness, and it is the rage that's keeping me going. My therapist advised me to channel this rage into the things I do, which has worked surprisingly well. The things I've read in these diaries are so bizarre that I thought maybe she was just writing material for some sort of twisted novel. That is, until I found all the other stuff in her computer, etc. Maybe I'm broken myself as well, but a part of me is actually enjoying this process of gathering all these tiny pieces of evidence and information, cross-referencing them with her diaries, and finding everything I can about her and her lovers. Part of me wants to see her burn on social media by posting directly everything I found out, since a big part of her business is centered around social media, but I'm refraining myself from doing it, since this would also affect both me and the kids, as well as her parents, who have been nothing but kind to me since we got married. I'm also not sure if I should bring this to light to her parents as well, since this will probably devastate them. I'm planning on confronting her after talking further with the lawyers about how to make sure to gain custody of my kids. The country I live in has a rather unfair tendency of granting custody to the mother, even if she's unfit for it, setting the terms of the divorce and child support. But thank you again for everyone who has supported me. What did you think of these stories? Let me know your thoughts about them in the comments, and thanks for listening.